went over the Brian Kelly bulletin board quote on Monday, the eve of the Texas Bowl, where he was talking about Dave Aranda and gave him like the classic backhanded compliment of, he plays this aggressive style. He had the personnel here at LSU. He does not have good enough personnel at Baylor. Basically saying the Bears did not have the talent to match their coach's genius. But then at the end, he gave the backhanded compliment and said, well, he's able to adjust and make some things happen. Isn't that what good coaches do? We knew what you meant, Brian. We knew what you meant. And while Baylor should have, and maybe was using it as bulletin board material, it didn't work. Didn't work. I said on the post game yesterday, you want to take a look at the Baylor secondary, you put a piece of bread in your toaster, send it to the highest setting, and then push the thing down, maybe even send it for a second go around in the toaster. That's how burnt they were on the defensive side. And I thought LSU, I said this on the post game too, and I'm sticking with it. Again, not a knock on LSU, but I thought LSU crushed Baylor in the first quarter. And then Baylor crushed Baylor after that. And that first quarter was so emblematic. I mean, LSU, they saw the weaknesses in Baylor's defense. I thought they were going to go screen game a bunch because Baylor's has struggled with that all year long, and they didn't need to. They went deep. In fact, they said, Caden Jenkins, that's your best corner. Let's isolate him. Let's get him one-on-one. Let's pick on him all day. And they did. And it was like, we're sitting here almost throwing the clicker at the TV saying, how are we not getting anything, any scheme to avoid that, to avoid Chris Hilton one-on-one and Caden Jenkins? And of course, Chris Hilton was not one of their top 5 pass catchers on the year because 3 of the top 4 guys were not playing in this game, not playing. And Chris Hilton had 130 yards the whole season going into this game. He had 113 in the first half against Baylor. And a touchdown. I know there's some people, in fact, I'm seeing in some of the comments now, that there was a lot that was let go in terms of pass interference. And there was. I thought there was too much. I thought that Baylor had a real situation early in the second half. I think it was that first drive of the second half where there was a clear PI in the end zone that they didn't call. That would have set them up at the 2-yard line. Baylor ends up not scoring on that drive. But I'll say this, like, the standard was set pretty early. And it's not like Baylor got 10 PI calls against them. The refs allowed them to play physical. I thought there was other problems with the refs that we'll get into in a few minutes. But LSU took advantage of that. And Baylor did not. So that's one where that comes down to, your coaching and your mentality. LSU said, oh, yeah, they're going to let us play back there on the back end. Let's play. And Baylor, they couldn't get hands on guys. I think it was the drive that put them up either 21-7 or 28-7. I think it's 21-7 because it was in the first quarter, where Nussmeier is flushed out of the pocket. It's the only time all day they flushed him out of the pocket. And he's throwing one away. It's a quick play, throwing one away. Everyone in the stadium thinks he's throwing the ball away, except for his receiver, who not only catches it, but gets 2 feet in bounds. Would have been good catch in the NFL. And no Baylor DBs anywhere to be seen. And then the next play, they score on a bomb touchdown. I'm like, were these guys even ready to play? Like, they weren't even in the play. It was just not a good defensive performance from the defensive backfield specifically, but really all levels of the defense, because, we talk about the pass rush and how that needed to kind of be resurrected in this game with a makeshift offensive line for LSU and both their offensive tackles out. And Baylor racked up 0 sacks. And again, didn't really get any pressure. The best play that was made by a pass rusher was Garmin Randolph dropping into coverage and getting a pick. That's a bad day at the office when the best play from your pass rusher was dropping into coverage and getting a pick. It's a good play by Garmin Randolph, but they were down Steve Linton in this game. Not a good enough excuse for Steve Linton, if we're being honest, but that's another segment. But but you had a golden opportunity to kind of get some confidence back up for your pass rushers, and you didn't do it, and your secondary got exposed. And I kind of went off on Brian Kelly on Monday after that quote. I wasn't trying to say that Baylor's secondary was really good. In fact, I said in there it's not very good. But I looked at LSU's secondary and said it's also not very good, if not worse, by some of these metrics. And they don't give you trophies for this, but LSU secondary didn't stop Baylor all day. Like, that's a fact of life. That's a fact of the game. LSU secondary did not stop Baylor. And if Sawyer Robertson was on his game, even with all the mistakes that happened, Baylor had a real shot to be in there till the very end. But again, Sawyer was off. Sawyer was off in this game. He was missing open guys. He missed a couple in the first quarter that Sam Macho, the color guy, was talking about as bad misses. And those of you who watch every Baylor game, you'll know, like, with kind of that, it was the same way with the Browse offense. You look at the way the Spavital offense is run, like, you're going to have a couple of those per game, like 3 per game, with those deep balls where they just don't land near anybody. And those are a lot of option routes deep down the field. And so in the first quarter, I was like, okay, you just had a couple of those, but he missed some guys downfield the whole game. Hal Presley could have had a huge game. But there were missed throws in there. There were ones where Sawyer had happy feet and he was trying to get the ball out in weird ways. He could have thrown a couple picks in that game, but this was not a special LSU defense all year long. In fact, their secondary was pretty bad. Yeah, we actually got in a comment here. LSU has the worst secondary in the SEC, and Sage Green was not playing. You had a depleted secondary back there that wasn't very good. And to be honest, Baylor just didn't take enough advantage of it. LSU took advantage of it. Garrett Nussmeier picked him apart. And that kind of became the difference in this game. Love you guys getting involved in the comments here. I've seen this one a few times. If y'all were in the SEC, you wouldn't even be in a bowl game. Bowl. Okay? This Baylor team, that's better than Oklahoma. And I know you LSU fans saw Oklahoma. Okay? This Baylor team was better than that. And probably better than Vanderbilt, who both beat Alabama. Yes, I mean, come on. Like, all right, the big mighty SEC. This was not a banner year for the SEC, by the way. I mean, it's always solid, but it was not. Like, 2 teams played themselves out of the playoff in the last couple of weeks against non-playoff teams. Alabama and Ole Miss played themselves out of the playoffs against Kentucky and Oklahoma. Like, don't try to tell me this is a great SEC year. Is the SEC better than the Big 12? Yes, but come on. Baylor could have absolutely been there in a bowl game. And it would have been great because they would have been playing some FCS school in November. So I think they absolutely would have been there in a bowl game. But Brian Kelly was right about that Baylor secondary. They missed Corey Gordon bad, I guess. And it definitely leads to, like, Baylor's going to need to address the cornerback position specifically because they've brought in some safeties, and I think good safeties, like good additions to this team. But you got to fix corner. Like, that was pretty evident yesterday. And you end up being without 2 of your starting corners, which really didn't help, with Snacks Johnson being academically ineligible and Corey Gordon hitting the transfer portal. But that is absolutely a position that you need to address because, by the way, you didn't have both those guys in this game. Neither of those guys are playing on your team next year. So LSU exposed that from Baylor. We already knew the pass rush was bad. They exposed that, but they really exposed just how much work you need to do on the secondary. And Dave Aranda did talk about that after the game. That's going to be on tomorrow's show. Thank you for making it to the end of the video, and thank you for making the Locked On Podcast Network part of your daily routine. We have got you covered with the most Baylor Bears athletics coverage of any outlet that's not directly tied into Baylor University. So if you want more of that, be sure to like and subscribe. Ring that notification bell to get notified every time we're dropping a video here on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks, and sick 'em.